Good morning. Organized people and organized money builds power. That is one of the taglines for Jeanne DuBois. I am pleased to have the opportunity to introduce Jeanne as our keynote speaker. You will notice in your folder that we've included a full biography for Jeanne, which has more information than was listed in the conference brochure. That said, you don't want me to read her bio to you. So I'll hit some of the highlights and tell you how it came to be that Jeanne is here with us today. I met Jeanne last summer when she gave a keynote address at the Center for Leadership and Ethics at the Virginia Military Academy as part of a closing conference for the Shepherd Consortium, which brought back together a couple hundred college and university students who had spent the summer all over the country serving various communities where poverty is pronounced. 3 of these student interns, including one here from Niagara University, served at the Dorchester Bay Economic Development Corporation. The talk Jeanne gave was entitled, Organizing People and Money for Power and Transformation. And I thought to myself, folks here in Niagara Falls and Niagara County need to hear this talk. In subsequent communications with Jeanne, which accompanied a request for her to speak at this conference, I came to find out that Jeanne actually spent time here just down the road in Buffalo, cutting her teeth in community organizing. You will notice that the bio we have for Jeanne is really a bio about the organization that she has spent more than 20 years with. 20 years as the executive director, and now in a new role as chief strategic advisor for resident engagement at the Dorchester Bay Economic Development Corporation. And this, I expect, is intentional because Jeanne celebrates the many accomplishments as community success stories, not success stories of Jeanne DuBois, but of the people of Dorchester with whom she works so closely. Their organization has been going strong more than 36 years, and their efforts have resulted in better quality housing for low and moderate income residents, commercial projects that have brought good jobs, living wage jobs to the community, and the stabilization of the neighborhood by shutting down a couple of major drug hotspots. And all this being accomplished by incredible organizing efforts that brought together dozens, hundreds, and even thousands of people to fight for their neighborhoods. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Jeanne DuBois back to Western New York.
Gee, that makes me sound pretty good, Dave. I just want you to meet another whenever I come back to this area, my life changes. I just want to warn you. I came here from Wisconsin, where I had been a high school teacher back in '77, and I want Joe to stand up, Father Joe Kozlowski, who he lives here in Niagara County. He's semi-retired, right? He's an Episcopal priest, and I worked with him at St. John Gualbert's in Cheektowaga, and I thought, Cheektowaga? What's that? I was assigned to the Polish East Side when it was still really Polish, and there were tensions, you know, all the stuff. People were flipping property. I won't give you too many gory details, but we started doing research and had 42 churches, Catholic, Protestant. Now in Boston, we have a similar group with the Alinsky Network, and that's similar to Gamaliel. I guess they're in this area too. So it's the organizing of institutions. And the key here, and the reason I'm so glad Joe was willing to come, he lives in Cambria, so he's real close. This guy knows what he's doing. He helped build one of these big organizations. And what I learned from United Citizens Organization that was founded in '75, and I left in '79 because my boss and I didn't get along. But Joe wound up being a friend, a life friend, and actually married my husband and me in Boston in '81. So he's so you see, Buffalo changes your life. My husband's brother and I were both organizers here. That's how I met my husband. So Buffalo changed, Western New York changes your life. So I'm glad you said that, Robin. It's true. And I go to college reunions and they all say you're the most downwardly mobile in the class, Jeanne. So watch out. But I know a lot of the groups that are in this room, and I think if you do what you love, and if you are obedient to your little calling there, right? This is a Catholic university we're in, right? And a lot of you are working with a lot of social justice and urgent needs here. And I figured out my theology in a bottle, which when I met Joe, I hadn't been to church in 10 years, right, Joe? And they got me back to church too. So, obedience. If you obey that calling, you don't have to be going to church, but whatever that calling is. Risk. Obedience leads to risk. You take a risk. Why? Because you've been called to. As soon as you take a risk, you jump off Niagara Falls, you get power in the form of people and money. And what do you get at the end? Joy. Now, don't steal that. If I see somebody patent that, I'm going to sue you. But I'm going to write a book about it someday. Maybe I'll write it with Joe. So I'm going to talk again about building power, organized people, and organized money. I learned it. I learned it with Joe. I said, what am I doing? A nice Western girl from L.A., then in Wisconsin, a teacher, and now all of a sudden I'm in Buffalo working in Cheektowaga with a big Polish community. And I have still Mary Laskowski's best pie crust ever recipe. Every time I cook at Christmas or Thanksgiving, I think of Buffalo too. So, sorry, Niagara Falls, I know, but Buffalo is where I lived. So, I have a clicker, right? There, okay. So, the key, I always say, and I said last night at this dinner, three-legged stool. Now, so there's 3 words to remember, not just 2, but organized people and organized money, that's 2, right? Is power. So, housing, yes, people need housing. Jobs, people need jobs. And we'll talk a lot about why you don't just build housing. Even if you're just a person that does housing, be sure you're with the people that are helping build businesses and creating jobs, right? And 3, organizing. Now, nowadays they call that resident or citizen engagement. This is the center, Dave, where's Dave? You're sitting. Civic engagement. That's a much tidier word than organizing. People that, a bunch of communists or something. But it's just, I want to just show you this little slide. Wait a minute. Which way do I go? There. I'll show you more pictures of our food factory that we just opened last June. Okay? These are the haphazard people. Now, you young 30-somethings, according to Tom, there's this bunch of young 30-somethings in town now, and they're starting to scheme and get together and think things. And then you have a lot of agencies, right? I went on a tour yesterday with Dave. Tons of things going on. Food pantries, housing, all these brownfields. I love brownfields because all you need for brownfields is money to clean them up, right? We've done about 20 of them. Look at a bunch of old hippies, people of color. They got together and started Dorchester Bay. There were 3 civic associations. You know, well-meaning people, kind of like you young 30-somethings stirring things up here, right? But what I learned in Buffalo changed my life. I met people like Father Joe, and I spent the first 6 months interviewing 300 people in the Bailey Delavan and in the Polish East Side, and went to their homes in all that snow, and took off my boots in strangers' houses, and I learned from the working class people, the good middle-income working class people. There was so much I didn't know. You know, I thought I was pretty smart and all that stuff, and I was not so smart. Okay, so these are the people that started Dorchester Bay in '79. Right when I got there, that's not my fault. Other good-minded people thought of it before me. And I just want to tell you about my in-laws, the Coins. You know, you probably met 1,000 of them in South Buffalo, right? You know, you have a lot of Irish up in this area too? So the Coins, my husband's family is he's one of 10 kids. He was the oldest. He was in seminary, right? Because you got to give 1 kid to the church, right? And 7 sons and 3 daughters. 7 sons slept in 1 bedroom, 3 bunk beds. You get the picture? And the 3 daughters in the other bedroom, and mom and dad. And 8 went to college. He was in steel, my father-in-law, Buck. He died at 65, but lung cancer, smoked, don't smoke. And 2 went into the military. But this was your classic blue-collar, working-class family, like Buffalo had lots of, and probably Niagara and Lockport had lots of, right? And I used to date a guy that was a Canadian motorcycle racer. Guess where he worked? At Dunlop, testing tires for them. And I didn't realize it specialized in motorcycle tires. So that's that family. All the kids now, like my children, are in their 20s. And all their cousins, almost all, went to college except mine. Now, my son went to aircraft technician school, and he's been in a band. He didn't want to just kill himself with college tuition and then make no money like you and Dad, Mom. So he went into a band, and he's really poor now. So now all the grandchildren are going to college, even the ones of the Marine and the Navy guy, okay? So there's a classic blue-collar family, good-paying jobs, right? Steel industry. I know we can do this again. I know, and it broke my heart when I was here in Buffalo working with Father Joe and others to see Bethlehem shut down, to watch the families, with their little houses and their little coffee makers, you know the families, and to watch all that just dissolve. It just broke my heart. The only reason I left is because my boss and I didn't get along, so otherwise I'd still be here. My mother-in-law is 90 years old, and she has a good pension because of her husband. Okay? They had a decent life. So, I'm picking up a little stuff of the book Bowling Alone, Robert Putnam. He grew up in Port Clinton, right on Lake Erie, right east of Toledo. And I heard him on the radio 2 days ago. I said, I have to put this in my PowerPoint. Why are 50% of the people in Port Clinton poor? It's a really pretty waterfront town, right? That's where all the rich people live. But you go across the street from one little strip of maybe 50 yards, according to him, and it's terrible poverty. So we've all watched this happen, right? Jobs going to China, manufacturing jobs, or the South, the Rust Belt, but then what I'm studying, like I've been doing in Boston, and you'll hear this story, you get a rail line. You figure out how to help people get to work and get to jobs and get to schools. And then you also, thank God, it's getting expensive in China to keep making things, so the manufacturing jobs are coming back. In the west side of Chicago, I've been studying them. I've been studying Baltimore. Wow, that's a city with 40% vacancies. Is that worse than Niagara Falls, New York? 40%. And in one of the lowest income neighborhoods, 80% vacancy. Baltimore, that's The Wire. Have you ever watched The Wire? There you go. So they can come back. These old industrial cities, there's advanced manufacturing. What's involved in advanced manufacturing? Do you work on a computer now? Yes. Can low-income people learn those things? Yes. We're going to put a digital fabrication lab in our area. 3D printers, right? CNC routers. That's what engineers do, right? Our people can learn these things. And how many of you are already working with people who are learning these things? Yeah? Quite a few. Yes? No? Nowadays, people are more and more segregated by class. I don't want to have to tell you this because you already had a poverty conference. You know all about this, right? They tend to live in the same neighborhood, date the same people, go to the same church, right? They stay together, and they're more segregated than they were 50 years ago, right? And where are those working class people like the ones that Father Joe served, right? Where are those neighborhoods? Those jobs have gone. Or they did leave, but they're coming back because Chicago is doing it. And you know, I said, it's like the weather. Whatever happens in the West gets here like a day later, right? So Chicago's getting advanced manufacturing back. The low-income people are getting training. And so remember, if Chicago has the weather, you're going to get it the next day, and Boston, we get it the day after you, right? So that's how it works. Politics. It's pretty weird out there right now, isn't it? Remember, organized people and organized money is power? Well, anybody can organize people and money, including people who don't always have the best intentions. Unions, that was up to 40% 50 years ago, down to 7% now. Well, they help. My best friend, Nora Greeley, is married to a carpenter, and he's retired with a great pension. And some of my carpenter buddies have pensions with $400,000 in them. I don't have that kind of money. I see when we did a half-and-half union, non-union project, just finished it, the unions visited the non-union side. They weren't trying to fight it because we worked with them ahead, so we were able to get more minority hires and subs. But they made sure the quality was there. They made sure that the minority subs, there were two people that were not paying their workers Davis-Bacon wages, the prevailing wage. And we caught a couple. Now, these were struggling. We were trying to get strong minority businesses to the next level, right? But then most of them were great. I don't want to complain about that at all. So you'll hear that story. Language barriers. In Chelsea, Mass., very poor town. The whole town was put in receivership. You haven't gotten that bad, have you? You're not in receivership yet. Okay. Chelsea did. Lawrence, the old mill city, 23rd poorest city in the U.S. So you know about cycles of poverty. You know how hard it is to get out of them. But this is where we all get together. So this is our overview, 1,200 units of housing at this point, a mix of home ownership and low income. My board more and more wants to see mixed income, because why? If you just build housing for poor and subsidize people, you're segregating them, right? By income. It's not about race, it's about income. And it's better. What did they learn on this mobility study? In Atlanta, they tended to segregate people too much by both income and race. But in Utah, of all strange places, there are big cities where there's more mobility because you have poor, middle, and more market rate people living not so far from each other. And it's healthier for people. There's more opportunities because you can work together and meet each other. We've done about, I think the last time I counted, it was around 1,115 jobs. It's about the same number of housing units as jobs that we've created. And in factories, we have 3 factories. Why not? If not you, who? Okay? Why not make your own factory? There's lots of buildings, right? Why not? It's fun. It's exciting. We started a rail line. We didn't actually start the fight to get more stations, but we had a train line that now has 9 stations. It used to have 13. It went down to 4. Why? Because it went through the minority neighborhoods. So the white people at the end got into the city of Boston, but it didn't stop in the middle. Isn't that outrageous? Do you think Dr. King would be on this fight? I think so. And then we have a reentry program. We're not a service provider. We do more what you call organizing. Because why? It's cheaper. Organizers help people help themselves. And I know we need service providers and counselors and my daughters had illnesses and needed, a social worker and all that. But reentry is the one service program we really love, and we've had over 500 people in it, and our recidivism rate's down to 6%. Over 60% are working. Jobs are the best social program ever, right? And you obviously want a job that pays enough. And then look at all 2,300 youth and adults have been involved in organizing. Now, we're 36 years old. Here's my board. It's 2/3 people of color. The only problem with this board is most of them are college educated. I don't want to insult anyone, but if we're too much in our heads and in our books, and if we don't go to Buffalo and learn from people like Father Joe, we're not hearing from the regular people. We're not listening enough. So I keep saying, go out and do one-on-ones. Go listen to people. And people don't want to hear that. My board doesn't even want to hear that. They have little retreats by themselves. And they say, Jeanne, this year you're going to be it's actually senior advisor, not strategic advisor. I got that mixed up. They want me to write up all the stuff we've learned. What's your secret sauce, Jeanne? I said, it's simple. It's one-on-ones, then you have small groups, and you break into groups, and they pick an issue that's winnable, short-term, immediate, specific, and has a decision maker. And then you do research as a group. The group decides, and then they go into action. We did this in Buffalo about 100 times, right, Joe? And then we had action meetings then with 1,200 people and cleaned up 142 houses in about 6 months or had them torn down. And we uncovered some real creepy landowner patterns. The kids in the Sunday school, who owns that house? Where did he get his money? You go down to deeds and mortgages. You see it in the bank records. Who are his hidden partners? In the corporation records. Okay, the filing papers with the state. You can find all this stuff out. We started seeing some schemes and who was really buying up parts of the east side in Buffalo and who their financing was and who they were connected to. And you'd be real surprised. I'll tell you later, but I don't want to get sued. And I have all those names in my head now. When we're dealing with gentrification in Boston now, I say these things, and it's always about this area, what I learned here, and it is game-changing. And you got a problem here in Niagara Falls, New York. So what are the new goals for my board? Something new. Create a thriving community. Housing, jobs, mixed income housing. Okay? More community engagement. They want me to go deeper into this. So I've been to Baltimore. I've been to Twin Cities, Minneapolis. I've been to Chicago. Alameda Court, I'll tell you that later. There are things to learn all over the country, and it's so much fun, isn't it, cruising around? That's what Dave likes to do, is cruising around. And then the vision. You know, they really want to get there. This board wants to get there. The only problem is they have to actually try to pick a short-term, immediate, specific, winnable issue and do it themselves so they don't need me just to tell them. So whatever you do, try something together that you can win in 6 to 8 weeks, okay? But you have to do research first and do it with the working class people too, all right? Do it with poor people, do it with working class people. Do it with the church people. You get those churches in there, it scares the politicians, right, Congressman? They take you more seriously. You got a couple of Catholic priests, a few nuns, and nuns are always scary. And they get really nervous. We have a loan fund with a lot of capital from the women religious orders. The Mercy's out here, somewhere out west here. This is out west, of all places. And I don't tell them, but the lending officers say, these are nuns' retirement funds. And the borrowers, 61% startups, 70% minority borrowers. Oh my God. It works. At financial strength, we have $338 million in assets now. And we started with those bunch of hippies and a few, people of color down the street from 3 civic groups. And now we have $338 million in assets. Okay? So you can do this. I mean, the neighborhood I work in is you've heard of Roxbury. Roxbury's getting gentrified now. Our neighborhood is still just about the worst neighborhood in Boston. It's the scariest, it has the most shootings. They did a whole feature on 68 blocks, Bowdoin, Geneva. So it's really, really bad. But Boston's a hot market now, and so we'll talk about that later. My staff, our staff, now I'm not the director, but that's Michelle, our COO, fundraising team, admin, and then we got a bunch of real estate people, a bunch of economic development folks and lenders. We got a whole bunch of finance guys. Usually we have some women, but now it's all guys. And those are our organizers, and they are awesome. They are awesome. And without those folks, we would not have won a $20 million HUD Choice Award. So here's how it started. Homeowners fixing up, the 3-deckers. It looks like a riverboat without a paddle, I always say, about the wheel. So Boston's full of them, but it was a really good idea 100 years ago. Mom and Dad live in the first floor, Grandma, then the kids in the second and third floor, and it's affordable housing. Or you own a 3-decker and you can rent out 2 units and you can live affordably. But now, I got a 3-decker for $30,000 in 1980. That same 3-decker is now appraised at $455,000. That's ridiculous. And the house next to that 3-decker just was built by a young fellow. 3 condos, each sold for $450,000. This is nuts. So this is the other side of the coin. First rehabs. Lovely. It looks like home, right? And that's, we did a lot of property research there too. This is our office building, wig stores. Oh, it was great. Our business district was so bad, we got that building for $25,000. And then some schemers tried to edge us out, and we had to get the locks changed because they were going to actually give the keys to the wrong people. I mean, this wasn't my fight. This is before my time. I've only been there 20 years. Wig stores. They said, I just want to tell you one last thing. The finance people said, mothball those upper floors, just make something happen on the first floor. We got a pharmacy, a Rick's Pharmacy. But the people ahead of me were smart enough. They got personal investors. They rehabbed the second, third, and fourth floor. It's been fully occupied for 30 years now. And it's now worth over $2 million. Okay? You've got buildings like this, don't you? Go buy one for $25,000. Do something with it. Get private people to come out of your Pints for Progress people or whatever. They're all. You know what I've learned about money and fundraising? There is no limit to fundraising except time. That is the only limit. That's true here in Western New York as well as in Boston. Supermarket crashed. It was empty. Dorchester Bay brought this one that also failed. Some people try things and they still don't work, right? Now, then this one failed too. America's Food Basket was a big success for a long time. His problem was he opened store number 2 and then store number 3, cross-collateralized, got overextended, had a bad lease on store number 3. But National Supermarkets of America came up from New York, bought him out. Now there's an America's Food Basket on almost every corner of every ethnic neighborhood in Boston. 160,000 a week in sales, 160 good jobs. And we made them a loan to keep them open. And we kept them open for about 4 months. We got an OCS grant later to help the new guys. And now it's another company, the Brothers Market. And there's a CVS store there. This is our first multifamily project. You like that? Does that look like here? See, I'm doing these to say everybody thinks, oh, Boston's all fancy and they have an attitude and there's all those colleges. Believe me, I'm in another country from Harvard. And even Northeastern and UMass Boston are the closest colleges to our neighborhood. But even there, people tend to segregate mentally, don't they? Oh, we're the educated people. No, the good ones, Northeastern has a co-op program. They've sent us fabulous students in our lending program or in housing. So work with those colleges. And Boston College, I got to say, you have good Catholic colleges with a strong sense of obedience, right, Sister Beth? And they will do things because of their faith that some of the other colleges might not, okay? So that's what it turned into. And we've now done it over again. We did about $5 million rehab in '85. We did a $10 million redo in 00, 15 years later. The previous director, the residents would all come to him and complain about all the mice, and he'd say, deal with it. When we looked at it and the residents said, we have a lot of holes in our building, there's a lot of mice, we said, we got to redo this building. And we did it, okay? Now we have happy tenants. That same place, Dudley Terrace, right on Dudley Street. So we are also a member of Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. Some of you read Holding Ground. And Gus Newport is a very famous man and a friend of mine. And John Barros, the last director of Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, is now our head of economic development for the city of Boston. He's a very good friend. And Elias Montero, our organizing director, is on their board. Police Community Safety Day, you know? There's a drug house down the street, the Pink Squirrel Lounge, sleazy place. Closed it down, demolished it, had a little pocket park put in there. We have child safety days, okay? That's really fun to close down drug houses, isn't it? So there's another beautiful building just like here, right? A nice big 5-acre industrial site, the Hurley Wire and Cable Company. Hurley would buy wire and cable from Mr. Curley, who worked for Mr. Burley. I'm not kidding you. Okay? I like music and songs, and that sounds like something out of South Pacific, right? So we tore this factory down, the old Hurley Wire and Cable, that Mr. Curley delivered wire from Mr. Burley. And there were all these fires, and they found an occasional dead body, and it was like that big place that is near the Blessed Community, your Hope 6 development here in Niagara I got to see yesterday with Dave. I said, oh, that's like a 10-acre site. And then we kept driving around. I said, no, that's a 20-acre site, the cardboard recycling place. So, I mean, to me, brownfields, oh, good, more work. We'll have fun cleaning that one up. And I can see they're out there digging around. You know, you've already had it tested. You know all the bad things in the ground. Now we have a digital printing factory that we built for Spire Digital Printing and Marketing Company. So we got rid of that bad old nasty place, cleaned up the dirty soil. They had the brownfield law for Massachusetts signed by the governor at the time, Cellucci, on our site in terrible old Dorchester. And that's what we built. $15 million, 166 jobs, 3 shifts, good paying jobs, right? Like my in-laws. We can do this. 17 funders, 10 million of debt, 4.5 million of equity. How do we do it? It's available to all of you. Economic Development Administration, HUD, OCS money for job creation, We got $1 million from the city of Boston. We got another $2 or $3 million from the Life Initiative, an insurance pool. You can have access to these things, folks. It's all available for you. Remember, there's no limit to funding and money except time. Okay? So I spent the last 30 years learning all this stuff. So those of you that are the age I was in Buffalo, you can learn all this too. But some of us can help you. So there we are right at the red line station. And that red line goes, do you know Boston? You know that's where it goes to. Where does it go? Harvard. If in a half an hour, remember Goodwill Hunting where he's on the train from Southie and he's going over to MIT every day and he's going back? Well, that's that same train. So what did this mean? Well, we start building a digital printing factory here. We'll get some of those talents over in our neighborhood, but be careful. We want pinstripe jobs, blue collar and white collar, okay? We didn't want just a bunch of people with an attitude looking at a laboratory or something. So at the red line, 17 funders. If you have a gap in your funding, go find the money. We had private foundations put money in. There's a lot of quasi-publics. You have access to LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation here. There's also Enterprise, right? They got a lot of green stuff. There's all those quasis. There's community loan funds. We always use Boston Community Loan Fund for acquisition and pre-development. Look at these guys. There's this big Vietnamese population over there. But it's a mixed project now. We got the blue-collar jobs, printing, and wrapping. There was a lady in the wrapping room down here on the right. She says, I was born to wrap. You know, people are proud of themselves. They like working hard, getting a good paycheck, and going home, right? It makes you feel good. And so strong people build strong neighborhoods. Why are these people here? We had a meeting every single month with the immediate neighbors of that digital printing site. And we had 45 businesses we brought to those neighbors. And they went, They just vetoed. They didn't want the refrigerator recycling plant. They didn't want the composting guy. They didn't want Caradonna Provisions, a food that attracts animals. They wanted it quiet. They wanted it not smelly. They wanted good jobs. They didn't want too many trucks. Gary Wong's Noodle Factory almost went in there. Too many trucks. He didn't want to have a limit on his trucks. This company met all their criteria. Then during construction, you have to wash off your tires after you go in and out, before you come out again. The people made the rule. How many rat traps do you put on the site? All those things we worked on with the neighbors. So these folks, strong people, build strong neighborhoods. And how do they get stronger? By doing stuff like this. It changes how they feel. Small business. We started our loan fund in '95 with a grant from, it was Partners for the Common Good. It was a bunch of women religious. Do you remember where they're based, Sister Beth? Yeah, it was religious money that started our loan fund. And again, there go the nuns. And these are the borrowers, the first borrowers. So they have created over 700 jobs. In Massachusetts, 50% of all new jobs are created by businesses with 4 or fewer employees. Think about that. And all over America, if people are just losing jobs, well, they're smart, right? I believe it. I was a teacher. They may not have had good study skills. Their parents may not have been that educated, but people are basically smart. I truly believe that. And look at all these little entrepreneurs that may never have gone to college. People can figure things out. You ever read The Millionaire Next Door? Read that book, too. This is McKenna's Cafe. It's become the Cheers of Savin Hill, Dorchester. Cheers, right? You know, that bar thing in Boston. Well, maybe I'm just too old because you're all so young. But the congressman and I are in the same generation. But the older I get, the younger people like him look, I'll tell you that. But McKenna's is now so busy. Inspire, the digital printing factory is right down the street. They had to add a second cook. Then across the street went the Avenue Grill, or Savin Hill Grill. Now they've got a beehive of a little business district right there near the digital printing factory and the train station. The red line that goes to Harvard. okay? And the red line also goes beyond Harvard and goes up to Davis Square, Somerville. Guess what's happening in Davis Square, where my husband used to live in a commune or a co-op. I'm sorry, a co-op. Now, it used to be good working class Irish and Italian and Portuguese. Prices are ridiculous, $3,000 a month for rent. I'll tell you about. I've studied Somerville CDC too, and they have another fight on their hands as the Green Line expands through Somerville up to Tufts and Medford. This was another beautiful building. See, does this feel like home? I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not joking. We can do these. Bought this for, I don't know, $20 or something, just back taxes. Tore it down, brought this guy in. Now, how did I know this guy? Because for the first 10 years of my children's lives, all we did is rent videos from this guy. And what are the two things we have a Main Street in Upham's Corner. There are 19 Main Streets. So certainly on 3rd Street here, you got the little wine bar thingy and you got a few music venues there. That would be an easy switch. In about 5 years, it would be totally alive, vibrant. And I went down, Joe and I had a drink over at Lewiston last night, and I thought, whoa, this is pretty nice over here. Joe says, yeah, it's really got a lot of money over here. You can do this. We can have neat things in our poor neighborhoods too, and then it won't be quite so poor. But look at this. It's a greenhouse cafe, and on the left was the video store. Now a Cape Verdean man bought it, and he rents out the business in the back. But that's one of the anchor food store or anchor businesses and restaurants in our neighborhood. So the second guy to the right, that's the dad. He came from Greece with $10, and he's now a millionaire. There's lots of these people. They just find a Greek somewhere and throw them in the mix. They can make businesses succeed. I don't know what they do. It's maybe they work 100 hours a day, and their children are running around the pizza shop or whatever. Big multifamily building, 147 units, $10 million project. Cottage Brook Apartments. Why residents at this stage of this story? Because there were shootings there. There still are shootings there. I'll tell you about the better days later. We had a shooting on this street in one of our buildings, and we said, come on, this has got to stop. I'd only been there about 4 months. So we had this party, this little peace march, and all the residents, they had Cottage Brook Apartment Tenants Organization, Cabato, all on Section 8 except the white lady who's the old teacher who lives in the neighborhood. And then there's the nuns, Sister Margaret Leonard. So you have this interesting mix of people. But this is the heart of Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative's territory, okay? And why did I want to work in that neighborhood? Because you have a big umbrella organization like DSNI that you can work with, okay? Top 10 Crime Watch Award winner in '96. Now it's all built in, all homes, affordable home ownership there. And the tenants, you don't want too many tenants. You want some home ownership too, and affordable home ownership. Then you have a healthy mixed neighborhood, right? So that's the kind of that's our co-op. We have 2 co-ops. This is a 38-unit one, Alexander Magnolia. It was arson for profit. If you read or saw the Holding Ground movie, night after night, houses were torched down this street. And when I got there, this had just been finished. They did it in '93. And that co-op has been stable now for over 20 years. The only problem with the co-op is sometimes you get an inside click and they control things, and sometimes they don't even pay their rent. I mean, a co-op, they have shared ownership. You don't own your own condo. You own a share in the corporation. But it's a nice alternative between renting and home ownership. So think about a co-op. Sometimes it's easier to get it done. But look at that. Doesn't that look like suburbs? And those were well-built houses. And they did a community center right the year I got there in '95. And see that guy on the lower right? He was one of those hippies. He's lost a little hair since the beginning days. But a very bright guy, Jim Luckett. I said, please stay with us. You can be a consultant. He knew more about housing than I would ever know. So he helped us a lot. Now the co-op center has a senior program. Mrs. Rose has passed away, but she started that. $2,000 it cost us. Why? Because we're organizing people and money. There's smart people everywhere in our buildings, like the ladies in the Crime Watch, the Cabato Tenants Group, like the seniors here. They'll start their own programs. And as we see, there they are having one of their little trips to the Arboretum. They had probably about an average of 10 or 15 at 2 days a week. And now Wait till you see our new community center, $110 million McDonald's crock money. You can get one here in Buffalo, I think. Well, it's a long story. We'll talk about it. So we're looking at plans. You know, there's our housing, the light-colored housing. The orange stuff is what we said, well, we got to finish this. This looks like Berlin after, East Berlin after World War II. Half torn down. I was there in '66. I saw it. It was bad. It looks almost as bad as some of our neighborhoods here, right? Just so empty. It's just, it's a social sin, right? So then we wanted a community center, and see that big factory up at the upper top? I'll show you a picture of that at the end. So here's our favorite bar, the Fundãozinho. In Portuguese, or Cape Verdean Creole, that means oasis. 4 shootings in front of this bar. We tried to get him out with back taxes. We tried to get him out with inspections. We tried to get him out with refinancing. We couldn't get him out, so we bought the bar for $1,025,000. Because the bullets were going next door into our buildings. And one of our staff's brothers was murdered there. 4 murders. Sorry, guys, this is not good. Now that's what's there. Dudley Village, with one readers, the Affordable Housing Finance magazine picked this as the Reader's Choice Prize winner about 5 years ago. Finished it in '08. But you see, it's quality housing. It looks like it could be in Brookline, fancy upper middle class neighborhood. So it doesn't have to look like low income. This is actually not all Section 8. It's 20 Section 8 and 30 workforce, what you call it. So it's tax credit rents people up to 60% of area median. But in Boston, that means you could be making $55,000 or $60,000 and live there at affordable, like $850 for a single and maybe $1,200 for 2-bedroom. They're beautiful apartments. We had 300 people qualify, so we have waiting lists for all this. That's what it looks like now. We also bought that last building down at the end. So literally, when you stand at Dudley Street, and DS&I is just around the curve there, we're right next to now our $110 million community center, which there it is. It's all built. It opened in '11, and already it's become a destination in the neighborhood, okay? It's got a giant pool with water slides, three basketball courts, digital printing thing, a whole technology center. Our seniors have moved in there. But that's before and that's after. And those are our buildings at the end. Doesn't that look like Niagara, New York? Lots of empty land. Yeah, it was like this for 30 years in that neighborhood. You can do this, folks. Okay, rail line. This is a rail line where only white people were on the trains. All those rings, we're on our way to getting all those rings. But it used to be just 4 stations. 1 at each end and 2 in the middle, only because DS&I fought hard and won 1 station. But the trains would go every hour and a half. And these are old, pokey commuter trains. So does it sound a little like your Amtrak station here in Niagara Falls, New York? There's a shed there, right? Come on. If you want to get your people jobs, get the train, get a station, and let's get on the train so they can get down to Buffalo for all those. And you got to figure out, like Bill Strickland did in Pittsburgh. He's coming. He's awesome. I can't say enough good things about him. He has welfare moms in laboratories using pocket calculators, calculus, and they're working for Bayer aspirin. Okay? That's why you need your train hooking up to Buffalo. And how often does it go? Once an hour? Once a day? Twice a day? Oh, come on. You can get more trips per hour. You can get your people on the train to where the jobs are. You need to help them with that. How many of your people, the low-income people, half of our people have no cars, right? They're twice as transit dependent as everybody else. Their average income is $17,000 less than everybody else's in Buffalo. So we said, well, let's go to war on this one. Now, why do we feel like we could tackle a rail line? Because we got stop signs. People will learn on stop signs. Joe, what was it we did on, was it Walden Street? What was the street over in Cheektowaga? Walden Ave. We went after rundown buildings, right? See, that you call it a blight fight. Everybody hates blight, right? You don't have to say, I'm going to go after so-and-so. Just go after bad houses. Get them fixed up or torn down. And then the people learn. I had 12-year-old kids from a church in Buffalo research a rundown house, found out the owners, found out the inspectors, found out the financing, found out the corporation records, And they got that thing torn down in about 3 months. 12-year-old kids. If they can do it, you can do it. And people love this stuff. They feel like Sherlock Holmes. And don't let the staff do the research on the computer for them. Let them go down to City Hall and records. That's where I learned all this stuff, right here in Buffalo in City Hall. And they'll show you how to do this is what he owns. Oh, and then here's who owns this building. But then this is the book that shows you everything that this person owns. That's how we uncovered Tim O'Callahan in Boston. Tim O'Callahan bought a 3-decker next to our digital printing factory before we put that in. Bought it for $40,000, offered it to us for $80,000 the next year. And I said, go to hell. We don't need your land, and I know how you operate. He would get liens, he'd pay the back taxes on houses. Then he would basically have a lien on the property, and then he'd actually put tenants in these rundown houses and collect rents. And he didn't even own the property. And he's still at it. But not as much. So here we go. Our vision 10 years ago was transit equity, transit-oriented development, mixed income housing, jobs and business, and a green corridor. Sounds good, doesn't it? Isn't that what we all want? Right? Everybody. I don't care who you are. Everybody wants those things. So we had a couple of rallies. We did our research. Marvin Martin, the guy on the top with the purple jacket, he started this whole organizing for transit equity. And they're still at it on a regional level, and we're now fighting some of the gentrification issues. But that day, we had about 120 people, and look at all these kids. A lot of these kids are from our Youth Force program. I'll tell you about them in a second. And there's Mayor Menino, right up there, the white-haired guy. He used to be my city councilor. I talked about how we kept him in an anteroom and brought him downstairs with the Battle Hymn of the Republic in a Lutheran church. Scared the heck out of him, but it was all in good fun because we depolarized later. And he was our mayor for 20 years. He became our mayor. And he always liked to embarrass everybody. He'd come to your house, he'd come to your meetings and say, oh, you made me build a footbridge, and nobody ever uses it. You know, but he was a good guy. He met a lot of the people in Boston. That's Edwin, the guy on the left. I mean, these kids are so smart. And when they learn how to do research, and then they go in and they win a stop sign. They won clean trash cans for the corners because there was too much trash, permanent trash cans. They got the bus line improved. They went on a jobs campaign. They have now won $19 million out of the state of Massachusetts for youth after-school job stipends. So yes, it is a service for kids with after-school jobs, but they organized 1,200 kids to go down to the State House. Every year they show up, and every year that budget item keeps going up. These kids are wonderful. I just can't say enough about them. So the Greenway, okay? There's lots of green stuff. It's not all connected, but we can connect it with a path, kind of loops. So we've been assembling sites. We identified 161 parcels. We've got 61 priority parcels, 6 that we've gotten started, and 2 pilot areas for bike path. Eventually, this is going to be a really nice green corridor that improves the neighborhood and connects people to what's a fair amount of green space in our area. There's Mayor Menino. There's us about, 15 years ago now. And we built a lot of these affordable home ownership units. A lot of them were duplexes side by side, but they're really nice looking. So that's what I keep saying, polka dot affordability, mix it up with home ownership. And now I'm working with some of the residents. Oh, Sister Clara Muhammad, see, how many of these do I have to show you? You have plenty of them, right? I mean, I'm getting bored. It's getting too nice over in our neighborhood now, so Father Joe and I will come help you. You can do this. Sister Clara Muhammad Co-op, Sister Clara Muhammad School was a Muslim parochial school. We had good friends in the mosque there. And there were people that moved in and were living there and causing fires, and they burned it. Just they were, smoking crack and lit the school on fire. And they had a lot of asbestos. So the school had to, it left. So we bought it for, I think, $36,000. The people were going to tear it down. That was the city of Boston's fire department. And we said, can you give us 48 hours? They said, you have to secure the building, and you have to have a plan to do something with it, or we're ripping this thing down. So we went to the city, got $250,000, and we secured it, and now it looks like that. You can do this. Now, I know, I didn't know this stuff. All I did is work on a supermarket in my own neighborhood, and we got 600 families to buy shares. I didn't know how to do all this stuff. You learn it from organizing. And when you do a group, a small group, you pick something short-term and winnable, you do your research, then you win your first thing, your stop sign. And the kids, what's next? They pick it. They pick it. Something they're interested in. So these are houses. Guess what they're sitting on top of? 100-year-old city ash dump. We did it properly. It's a brownfield. Put rubber membrane on top. Those houses are all on stilts, on piers, and sitting on top of ash. Now, it turned out it's not toxic the way it could be if you're living right on it. So we figured out how to make it safe. But all of this is according to Hoyle. All this is according to the rules of the brownfield program. Those are the houses we're building now. Look at those. And now, guess what? 10 years later, guess what's happening with the homeowners? They're so mad because see all those cute little details with all the little colors and panels? That wood, it turned out in '04, there was such a building boom that we had to buy all this wood from Australia. Guess what? Australia wood doesn't last really well in our weather, right? It's too soft. So we're working with the homeowners. Why? Because they know how to organize themselves. 15 homeowners, and they're holding us accountable. And until I quit being the executive director, I was meeting with them about every 3 weeks because we respect them. Henry Street, the worst of the worst of the worst. 18 foreclosed three-deckers in '08. Two of the biggest drug gangs, not just a drug house, drug gangs, 37 Henry and 18 Henry. We're talking Columbia Drug Cartel drug gangs. We're talking real organized crime. They were also in cahoots with the Dudley Street posse over on the other side of the neighborhood. So they've gotten organized. The organized crimes are even organizing more. There were 4 shootings on the summer of '09, and there were hardly any people on this street. Does that look familiar too? And during the foreclosure period, right, a lot of people lost their homes. So there we are, tons of foreclosures. So we used stimulus funds, bought a bunch of them up, worked with the city of Boston, and now they're all fixed up. And our organizers, slowly but slowly, we had people moving back in, but the drug gangs were still there. When our tenants, new tenants of new owners would move in, they threatened the tenants. They put a dead pit bull in the next door neighbor's trash. And they'd say to our new moving in tenants, if you don't snitch, you'll be fine here. Meaning, if you do. They've already shot 4 people. There was a spree of shootings, just shooting up buildings. It was like McDonald's, prostitution, drug dealing. A professor at UMass Boston bought one of our new houses. So these are the people now. They're very proud of themselves. All the drugs are gone. And finally, we got the next door neighbor to buy the old drug house, got him some city money, and now we're celebrating. That was a year ago with the partnerships we did with the city inspectors, with the police, with the mayor's office. And, it takes a village. So this is a lot of Cape Verdeans, but it's more diverse than I realized when I first got there. These are all new homeowners or tenants. And 2 of the leaders, that little short lady, she's Puerto Rican, and the one next to her is, I think she's from El Salvador or something. But you have Cape Verdean, Latino, African American. And so they didn't always speak the same language, but they became great friends with each other. And it was only that one little street. Then, when we finally got the big drug cartel, drug house taken over by inspectional services, and they condemned it, and then we got Mr. Montero, the next door neighbor, to buy it through Doug George, one of our joint venture partners. Well, then we won a $20,000 national prize. You have LISC here, you have Enterprise, you have these awards, MetLife Foundation, $20,000 for doing a good job. Okay? There's no limit to fundraising, folks, but time. Just a sidebar, one of our loan programs used to be home ownership, home improvement loans, and also mortgage modifications during the crisis. That ran out of money, but if you have NeighborWorks affiliates here at all, they do have access to home improvement loans. So use them. Use NeighborWorks, use LISC, use Enterprise for home improvement money to keep people, unbankable people, in their homes. Remember the rail line with only 4 stations? Well, we won $200 million. Stop sign today, a market tomorrow, a rail line next week, okay? It took us 15 years. This rail project took 15 years from the beginning of the organizing with Marvin Martin. But in 13, and they started in 00, the CDCs like mine got involved because we knew it would build power. And now instead of just 2 stations, we got 4 stations because the CDCs had strength up and down the corridor. I like my friend Marilyn there. I just like the way she's got her fist up in the air. And that's our mayor, and that's Governor Patrick, and they're both gone now. And that's Mela Bush, who's one of the lead organizers. There's Newmarket. Newmarket is our last bastion of good industrial jobs in Boston. 400 businesses, 15,000 jobs. Sue Sullivan, the lady right there, the one cutting the ribbon. She's been there for 30 years watching really sleazy hotels get slightly converted into Holiday Inn Expresses and things like that. But, you know, it's a real kind of tacky, rundown industrial zone. But now it's getting better, and we even made a loan, an SBA loan of almost $400,000 for a guy with back office IT to buy a building there and create 25 jobs there. Good jobs. So Newmarket is our new best friend. We have the 9-mile rail corridor and an industrial center on each end. We call them the industrial bookends. Work with your industrial people. They've already got something going there. Maybe you can bring a little Chicago to them, you know? So that's that story. I just told it. 25 back office jobs. He'll train people on the job. They don't have to be a genius at computers, okay? Small business loans. Again, like I said, it's been over $8 million now, over 700 jobs. There's Mash, he's Somali. You know, one thing about the people coming from other countries, they have their little clubs and groups, don't they? Partly it's a language thing. He's got a little mailing thing where you can send things back to Somalia. So all the Somalis hang out there. So the new immigrants still have their little social capital, but it's these social networks that are such a treasure. The Cape Verdeans have it. It's really strong. The Caribbeans are so mixed, they're kind of losing it. The African Americans are saying, where'd everybody go? I mean, there's still strong African American churches in Boston, and that tends to be what they really, you know, own. But they're learning to diversify with all these newcomers too. And even we're helping the businesses with, you know, improving their computer systems. That's a lady from Senegal on the right, Jeanne Marie Claude. She makes peanut butter chicken. Any of you had it? Recipe. I got this from a taxi driver in Washington, D.C. Put a chicken in a, you know, Dutch oven, or just get a bunch of chicken breasts, saute them, don't cook them all the way through, throw in a can of spaghetti sauce. You can do fancy stuff if you want. And then like a half a cup of peanut butter. Simmer it for 10 minutes. Best meal you'll ever eat, peanut butter chicken. It's her most popular dish, and you can throw in cilantro, and promise you, it's my kid's absolutely favorite meal. Isn't that interesting? Now, the train. We've won more stations. We had 3 open last year. Guess what? People aren't getting on it. How are we going to get more stations and more trips per hour if the people don't get on it? These are tenants at Cottage Brook Apartments. Remember Cottage Brook, the ladies walking down the street in their little crime watch? They didn't know that was for them. They said, oh, we thought it was for those other people, which it had been. That's for us? For us poor people? We got the fares lowered down to $2. Now they had to go up to $2.10. But it's the same as the transit system. Even at $2.10 an hour, the same price as the rest of the Boston Transit Authority, MBTA, they weren't taking the train because they didn't think it was for them. Think about that. Changing their behavior so they could get a job or get to school easier, 15 minutes instead of an hour and 15 minutes. So these are some of our kids, and these are some of our parents. Guess what? Those adults, the kids, they're fabulous. You know, as long as they stay involved and keep doing things, they're going to be fine, like the kids in your culinary program. Those moms, Now they organized, they've gotten more involved and more involved and more involved. Just doing one little train trip changed something for them. They just organized our annual meeting at our new food factory. Okay, so you see how it grew? I'm not going to go into all these details. Over the 10, 15 years, that rail corridor effort, that's what it took. But bit by bit, you break it into small, winnable parts, like getting the fares down, or getting one more station, or getting a petition, or having a negotiation with the transit people. And little by little, our congressmen, our senators, everybody helped. Mike Capuano, do you know Congressman Capuano? Congressman? He's a good man, right? So you're sort of soulmates, aren't you? Okay? And all the stuff that we've accomplished up and down the train line. The key here also is if you're getting more transit for your low-income people here or anybody going in and out of Buffalo, be sure that CDCs do the right thing and buy up land, or you buy it if you're not a CDC. Buy it and put something on it, and it won't flip into Somerville a la Harvard, okay? So we created a corridor on the corridor. This is a $100 million corridor. Folks, when I got there, I never dreamed about $100 million. Our digital printing factory was $15 million, right? Organized people, organized money. So the red one's senior housing, the green, dark green is our new rehab rental, and then we have the meat factory. There's John Kerry. He was our senator. We got $20 million because we worked with everybody in the neighborhood, all the different groups, DS&I, Project Right, you name it, the unions. That's before. That's during. That was the groundbreaking. We had 51% union and 49% non-union because we were committed to minority subcontractors. We didn't have a minority general contractor. But we looked at people's records. We had the people, the compliance people at DS&I that helped us make sure that, look at our goals, 51% local, the reality, 65%, or 51% local, the minority goals were 51%, 65% minority workers. For women, goal was 15%, we only had 9%. We didn't hit that goal. It's hard to recruit women to good construction jobs. A lot of them are just nervous about it. The goal, 30% minority subcontractors minimum. We worked with the mass minority subcontractors, mass minority contractors. Those are good friends now. The reality, 48% minority subcontractors. The goal for female subs was 10%. We got to 9% on this project. Okay? So this is weird. We said with our union friends, and we have good union friends, and they were all union because of the Spire factory, the digital printing factory, that this is a new hybrid. If we're going to get minority businesses to grow, we got to get them in these, and they're not all union. They just can't afford the dues or whatever. So if you want high numbers, think that way. That's what it looks like today, except we have a ton of snow. I mean, it is so, I missed the blizzard of 77 here. I got here at the end of 77. And then I went to Boston in 79. And Boston had that same blizzard in 78. Remember, it always follows you guys. So all these buildings, I mean, they're really nice. And these are all low-income people, but there's a lot of home ownership being built by the CDCs around there. So, you know, sometimes you have to do it section by section. But we believe, even our newest project, which I'll show you in a minute, that you can get financing for a mixed income project. So you're not, again, segregating people by income. Old food factory, the hot dog, Pearl meat's still in there. If you ever buy Pearl hot dogs, you'll know where they're made. They used to be made here. They're now made outside of Boston and Randolph. Like here, a lot of those good jobs went to the suburbs, right? This is what it looks like now. Isn't that cute? We have 17 businesses in there, in the common kitchen and the food truck kitchen, and 7 growing businesses that have their own production spaces. Opened last June, 71 new jobs. Okay? And these are all local entrepreneurs, food people. I was telling there's the salsa guy, there's the jerk chicken lady, there's the macaroon lady, the chocolate guy. There's, let me see, we got the Argentinian guy. There's a Uyghur kitchen from, you know, Uyghur, they're from China somewhere. We have a Uyghur food truck. I mean, it's amazing how many kinds of food there are. And guess what? On opening day, we had over 500 people. because they were all serving free food. So whatever you do food, and people will come. I mean, we couldn't keep them away. We had to beat them away with a stick. Christmas time, same thing. Over 500 people came to test the foods, and buy some arts and crafts. That's what it was like. This didn't remember Spire Factory, $15 million, 17 funders. We had 27 funders for this one. We just finished it. It's a financial barn raising, folks. Where did I learn this stuff? Right from with Joe and here in Buffalo. We had money campaigns. St. Gerard's Church, we'd go around, hit up the local business people, raise $6,000. I mean, this was maybe one of the proudest days of my life, and it was our lives, because it's certainly not about me. I understand organizing, and I do like to agitate people. Inside a $1 million common kitchen, there's Darnell. That oven, wait, those are the freezers. They're convection ovens, can do 10 pork bellies in 40 minutes for the pork lady. Darnell standing in front of the Baxter oven, you can do 400 cupcakes or muffins in 10 minutes. It's like walking into a refrigerator. I said, you could die in there. You could die in that big refrigerator up there. The old Pearl Meats refrigerator. We just used the building. Look at all these. These are all women. It's interesting. I didn't plan that. I got this picture from the people who run it. Crop Circle Kitchen runs an incubator in the old Sam Adams Beer Brewery. And this is number 2. And it's going so well, they're going to probably fold the first one into this one. And the key is having local people. Now, their local people are getting the jobs there, like 70%. But we're not seeing enough local businesses. The Jerk Chicken Lady is one of them. But getting them ready to spend $2,000 to get the permits and go through the process. So those are barriers we're getting other funders to help us on, okay? You want local people to have their businesses grow there. Common kitchen, or there's a common refrigerator. Oh, this is the second way to die. If you close that door, you will die if you can't get out. Okay, common meeting room. They have training sessions now for the businesses. A lot of them know how to make their food, but they have no idea how to run a business. So that's partly what they're learning here, right? But if you have mom's great recipe, but you want to start a business, you can't just do it if you have a great recipe. You have to want to start a business. And I do want a beef on weck food truck here, Robin. Everybody can get buffalo wings, but they're not nearly as good as they are here. Not nearly in other places. They all think it comes from buffaloes, too. They're so stupid. So I say, no, it's buffalo. Buffalo. So anyway, these are the smokers on the left. Those are now offices. See? Okay, I'm going to have to wrap. Okay? This is hopefully going to be a digital fabrication lab. Remember the 3D printers? CNC routers. This mom and daughter team are trying to do this with MIT. We'll see if we can pull it off. They have no clue how to start something or run it, but they have a great idea. So we look at all these people, industrial sewing machines, bike repair, another commercial project. See, we got plenty of this stuff like you have. A food co-op, we were going to put them in there. It's only been 10 years that we've owned this building. We bought it for $500,000. So you do pay interest. It does cost you something. That's why you need to build up your own financial strength. We have loan funds and all that. But they're going to move down around the corner and into a building that a big funder just bought them straight out. That was better for the co-op. Look what the co-op did. They had these Fresh Fridays. And all the kids, look at this. Violins and cellos in Bowden Street. I mean, that's the worst crime, most shootings in the city. And there they are, behind their little fence, playing the cello. You know? Playing chess. People are smart, right? I just said I'm finished with these pictures. Some of our after-school programs. This is our summer camp. Horses, goats. Why not? It's fun. See, what they've learned in Chelsea is, especially if people are second language people, they may have lost some of that strength in their ethnic support groups. So they just have neighbor circles, they call them. And all they have is 3 meetings and just to get people to know each other. And they build ties, and if they want to pick a project to do something short-term and winnable, they can. But it transforms people. And they're finding all the services you provide people. If you have a little friendship group, 50% better chance that they'll get benefits. These are our summer camp kids. These are our teens at the train station rally. These are the teens training other teens. 10 get paid $100 a week, and 30 more get trained by those teens. There they are with their lobby day up at the State House. And technology training is now over 2,000 people have been trained in computers in our different low-income buildings. That was Cookie on the left, both a graduate, then a trainer, now an administration position on our staff. She has kids going to college. Now, we've 2,004 people by last year, and we have 4 tech centers. So look at all the stuff they're learning. It creates networks and a lot. We had a reunion, and so many of the graduates have gotten job promotions within the job they had. Our ex-offenders, I told you that story already. But we've gotten very close to a lot of these guys. They're just like your son and mine. They just maybe made a bad decision or just had the wrong friends at some point. It's not, as the mayor used to say, it's not a life sentence, is it? We don't ever ask what they're in there for. It doesn't matter anymore, okay? But they find if there's a support team, when they come out within 24 hours, they won't go back to their old gang. Because if there's not, they will. That's the only support group they had. Block parties every year since 93, sorry. The residents run it. Don't do for others what they can do for themselves. People are smart. And if they learn to organize and do something. And these are just some of the kids in our block party. And I think this is how I ended last summer's talk. If our children are happy, we're happy, right? It's true, isn't it, in your own home? If your kids are okay, you're okay. Even if you're not okay. You know, my favorite is that little girl with the eyelashes. But the boys, I always want to be Batman or Spider-Man. So anyway, Putnam's research, I just got this yesterday. He gave a talk on the radio 2 days ago. Look at the bold. In all the areas that you folks work in, if people are involved in civically engaged groups in any fashion, there is greater success, even in the programs you're currently offering. The importance of social networks for job placement and other economic outcomes. And look at this one. In economic development, highly efficient, highly flexible industrial districts based on networks of collaboration among workers and small entrepreneurs. It works in Silicon Valley, and it works for Benetton. That's what you got to do here, is create lots and lots and lots of little groups. Let them try their wings. Let them start on something small. And finally, these are the line now, gentrification threats, flippers like you have lots of here in Niagara Falls and Buffalo, right? Lots of flippers, lots and lots and lots of flippers, and some of them really creepy, really scary people. Find out who they are, where they get their money, work with your politicians, slow them down or put them out of business if you can. We had Roy Kimmick, I'm using that one name. He worked for the city of Buffalo in real property. He was up on ladders fixing his rundown properties that he'd gotten the wrong way. This is 35 years ago, so I don't even know if he's still alive. But please don't say that I said that, because he could sue me. Projects, home ownership, mixed income, building family wealth. Some of you have asset building programs. And land trusts, that's what DS&I does. Tax abatements, you can use all these little government tools to help you do this stuff. And here's our next project, we hope, on the right, lower right. That's what it did look like about 2 months ago. That's what our plan is. Light industrial in the front. Why? Because we like light industrial. Little incubators. There's a 40% vacancy rate in saggy commercial buildings, big buildings. But if you break them into smaller slots, like 1,000 to 5,000 square foot bays, like our food factory, there's a 1% vacancy rate. That's where people are moving. And again, work with everybody that you can. I know you have NOAA here, Niagara. What does that stand for? Niagara? Good. Work with them. Work with Father Joe. I told him, come on, Joe, you're semi-retired. You can help these folks. Just give them some advice or something. Sister Beth's going to take care of that. So. He says, Jeanne, you're mischievous. And then there's all these good things. Jobs, connections, people. Do you think we're on our way to creating a thriving community? if you have questions, I know I used up my whole hour, I'm sorry. Usually that's just death. But, I mean, these stories are really important, aren't they? If we can do it, I know Boston's like Boston, but, you know, it's not any different than Buffalo or Niagara Falls, New York. It's really all the same.